Hi Lance, thanks for opting into the instructor video critique here. I've just been looking over your design. I think you're off to a good start on some things. I like your contrasting typefaces with the large subheadings. Your columns are nice and tidy. I really like how you have them justified. I would increase the amount of space in between the columns. They're a little bit too close to each other here in this middle area. Make sure your gutter in between those columns is a little bit wider. And then also try to make sure they're aligned perfectly on the top. So see how this column is bumped up a little bit. I would have them have a nice crisp alignment across the top of any of the columns. Looks like you have that here on the second and third page. Just make sure that carries over to your first two pages. Okay, so those are just a tiny thing I just noticed, but let's talk about big picture here for a minute. One of the things that I notice when I look at your design is it has a lot of content, which isn't a problem, but it is kind of making the layout feel a little bit dated. So one of the things that you want to try to do and try to kind of integrate in any modern design is a good amount of white space. So let's take a look at some of the good examples from the assignment here. So you see how this is one of the good examples, and it has a good amount of white space around the image. And then actually down here, this pull quote is very large, and then it has a good amount of white space in this kind of shape area and even a little bit here. Now this one's an even better example. Look at the amount of white space in the gutter between your page 2 and your page 3. Look at the amount of white space between where your nice justified column ends and the edge of the page. Look at the amount of white space that your eye can travel around this really cool contrasting within the size of the design pull quote here. Okay, so this is kind of the direction I want you to move when it comes to white space. Think in terms of a good amount of space for your eye to travel around your content. With that, you would see that you'd probably increase your gutter in the middle of the page significantly. You'd probably, like I mentioned, have the gutter in between these two be larger as well, and then probably have more space between the edge of your page and where your columns start. Now, having narrower columns is instantly going to update your design. It's also going to free you up to make your images larger. One of the main things that kind of helps a design feel contemporary is really big images. Often those images are full bleed, meaning they go all the way off the edge of the page. So that's an effective way to also help your design look more contemporary. So for example, let's take this image. Let's pretend we make it at least 2 times as big. Perhaps we move it down to the bottom of the page. We're going to get rid of this stroke. Anytime you have a black stroke on a shape, it's instantly going to date your design. That applies especially to the icon set project, but it also applies to this one. So I'd get rid of your black stroke around this shape, and I'd probably also play around with the idea of getting rid of this brown shape as well. But either way, envision that you have, if you do a full bleed, I would have the picture just go all the way off the page, no shape, because your goal is to have your eye fluidly move around the page. See how your eye is kind of getting trapped in this picture, then your eye is getting trapped in this picture with all these variety of lines. Okay, so let's say we make this image 2 times its size, and it's going to flow all the way off to the edge of the page on the left and on the bottom. It's going to hit the middle gutter here, and then it's going to take up maybe 1/3 of the page following that rule of thirds. And then you'll have 2 nice tidy columns up here with white space around them. Okay, I think your pull quote is interesting. You do have to remember this is where the fold of the page would be, so you'd actually render this pull quote illegible because you'd lose a lot of the words. Also, it can be very tricky to have anything at an angle. So for beginners, I generally recommend not having any type at an angle. I probably would just I kind of like that the bullet, this is like a bullet shape, is at an angle. That looks interesting. So one thing you could do is you could just make this a gold bullet without the pull quote in it and make it a really kind of cool large background element, perhaps. Kind of make it like a transparent shape in the background. And then add your pull quote. Maybe you do a text wrap around the pull quote between 2 of your columns or something like that. Okay. Um, you're probably going to have a sizable amount of type that you of this body copy that you end up not using, which is totally fine. The goal instead is, first of all, a very strong, compelling attention grabbing heading, and then images that just really catch your attention. Okay, so here with this image, I do the same thing. Get rid of all these areas where you're trapping your white space, because this image actually has white space, but it's getting trapped not only by the edge here, but by the brown, by the black, and then the edge of the page. So just envision it flowing off the edge of the page. Then I think it might be kind of an intuitive choice to maybe put your title up here in all this white space. And I want you to think a little bit about color scheme. Right now it's pretty monochromatic, which you're pulling these colors from your images, but to add some contrast in might be a good choice. Is there maybe a deep gray you could pull in, or a deep blue? I kind of feel like you're still wanting to keep the military colors. Maybe even this yellow, something interesting. Look for, or the red. Look for something that's kind of compelling in your images that you can pull out to just add that little bit of pop that you need right now. Okay, so those are the things that are going to get you heading in the right direction. Um, I'm not going to mention too much that I'm pretty sure you probably didn't take these images this week. Um, I don't know how much of a deal breaker that is for me, because I'm assuming these are personal images that you've taken. And so maybe in your project report, if you could just elaborate on that for me, that would be helpful. Okay, so you're off to a good start. You have all the content, you're hitting all the minimum requirements. I just need you to tidy it up in terms of white space, in terms of some contrast, maybe a little bit more of a color scheme to help make some things pop. But you're definitely heading in the right direction. Okay, thanks, Lance.